Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at the unique perspective that immigrants bring to the U.S.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to be going through some discussions and articles about, what it means to be an immigrant,
Okay.
how it shapes their worldview, and why that's so valuable to the American conversation.
Yeah, one of the sources actually, it uses this phrase describing immigrants as almost a nation unto themselves.
Really?
Not in the traditional sense, of course, but in a way where their shared experience, regardless of where they come from, creates this distinct perspective that's so interesting to consider.
A nation built on shared experience, not geography.
Right.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
What kind of experiences are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be easy to just pick up and leave everything, and start over in a new country.
Definitely not an easy decision. The sources really highlight the sheer weight of what many immigrants are actually fleeing. We see stories of economic hardship like, picture a brilliant engineer but with no job prospects. Their skills are wasted simply because of the lack of opportunity.
Wow.
Or a family working themselves to the bone, but they're still unable to put food on the table for their children.
Just because of the situation they're in.
Because of poverty and corruption, it makes you appreciate the systems we often take for granted.
It does. It's easy to forget how fortunate we are to have those opportunities.
Right.
But it's not always just about economics, is it?
Oh, absolutely not.
What other factors are driving people to make such a monumental decision?
Several sources detail really harrowing accounts of political oppression.
Okay.
Imagine, living with that constant fear of speaking your mind.
Yeah.
Knowing that just the slightest criticism of the government could land you in jail, or worse.
Yeah.
Seeing your daughter forced into a marriage against her will because of cultural or religious pressures.
It's a stark reminder that the freedoms we often take for granted are non-existent in many parts of the world.
Many, many parts of the world. Yeah.
And I imagine even in societies that appear relatively stable from the outside, there could be really deep-seated social limitations.
Sure. Absolutely.
I know some of the sources describe women being denied education simply because of their gender, or families that are ostracized for their religious beliefs.
Right.
I mean, those limitations can be just as suffocating as outright political oppression in a way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So this nation of immigrants comes to the U.S. having experienced firsthand what it means to lack these fundamental freedoms and opportunities.
Right.
Makes you wonder how that shapes their view of American life.
Yeah.
Of the things we consider ordinary.
The things we might just, look past.
Exactly.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The sources suggest that this background of hardship can foster a profound sense of gratitude.
Oh.
Almost like a hyper-awareness of the things that many Americans take for granted. They're not just grateful for material things either.
Yeah.
But the systems and structures that allow them to just live a life free from fear and oppression.
Like what are some of those ordinary things that take on a whole new meaning when you've lived without them?
Well, the rule of law is a big one. The idea that the legal system, while not perfect, is there to protect your rights and ensure a fair process.
Yeah.
For many immigrants, this is a revelation.
Really?
They've come from places where, arbitrary arrest or seizure of property or just unfair treatment by the authorities, it's just commonplace to suddenly be in a society where those things are the exception, not the rule.
Wow.
It's transformative.
It's like breathing fresh air for the first time.
Right.
That sense of security, knowing that you have rights and that there are recourses if those rights are violated.
Yeah.
It's something you don't fully appreciate until you've lived without it.
You really don't.
And then there's social mobility. The belief that hard work can lead to a better life.
Right.
That your future isn't predetermined by your social standing or family background.
Yeah.
For someone who spent their entire life trapped in poverty because of a rigid social hierarchy, the American ideal of social mobility, it's incredibly powerful.
Very much so.
It's the American dream in action.
Right.
But the sources also talk about this idea of American luck.
Yeah.
Is that just another way of saying that immigrants appreciate the opportunities they have here?
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
The term luck is almost like a shorthand for the really complex interplay of historical, political, social factors that have created this, relatively stable and prosperous society.
Right.
Immigrants are acutely aware that they didn't create the system.
Right.
They're just benefiting from it.
It's like they're arriving at a party that's been going on for centuries, and they're just incredibly grateful to be invited.
And to participate.
Yeah. But they also bring a fresh perspective.
Yes.
A unique set of experiences that can enrich the party even further.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating points in all these discussions.
Yeah.
The relationship between immigrants and the U.S. Constitution.
Now, this is where I'm intrigued. How does their experience as newcomers shape their understanding of something as fundamental as the Constitution?
It's a good question.
Is it simply a matter of just appreciating the freedoms that it guarantees?
It's definitely more than that. One source argues that immigrants, having lived under these vastly different systems, actually develop a deeper understanding of the Constitution than those of us born in the U.S.
Really?
They've seen firsthand what happens when those fundamental rights are absent.
Yeah.
So they don't view them as abstract ideals, but as like hard-won victories that need to be constantly defended.
So it's not just gratitude.
Yeah.
It's almost like a sense of responsibility, guardianship of those freedoms.
Exactly. They understand the fragility of those freedoms in a way that many of us who've always enjoyed them may not.
This makes me think of something you said earlier about immigrants bringing a fresh perspective to the party.
Yeah.
How does that play out in relation to the Constitution? Do they see things that we might miss?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Because they're coming in with fresh eyes, they're able to identify areas where the American reality might not fully live up to the ideals enshrined in the Constitution.
Interesting.
They see those gaps between theory and practice, those inconsistencies and injustices that have crept in over time.
So it's not just about appreciating the good.
Right.
But also recognizing where things could be better. They're not just guests at the party.
Yeah.
They're offering suggestions for improvement.
They're active participants, right?
Exactly.
And that's where their perspective becomes incredibly valuable. Because they've lived under different systems, they can offer these insights into how things could be done differently, how the U.S. could learn from the successes and failures of other nations.
It's like they're bringing a whole new set of tools to the table. A new set of ideas that can help us improve on the blueprint laid out by the Constitution.
That's a great way to put it. They're not here to tear down the house.
Right.
They're here to help us renovate it, make it even stronger and more resilient.
I love that.
And this brings us to another crucial point. This isn't about immigrants simply complaining about the U.S. or demanding special treatment.
Yeah.
It's about them using their unique experiences to contribute to positive change, to make America a better place for everyone.
So their critique comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
A deep desire to see this nation live up to its highest ideals.
Absolutely.
But how do they actually go about doing that? How do they translate their experiences into meaningful action?
Well, it seems like, their experiences, both the hardships they've overcome and the gratitude, would give them a different perspective on how to make things better, how to create change.
So it's not just about advocating for specific policies.
It's more than that. Though that's certainly part of it. It's about shifting the entire conversation.
Yeah.
About helping Americans see their own country through fresh eyes.
So changing hearts and minds, not just laws.
Exactly. One source talks about immigrants as like bridge builders. Helping to connect people from different backgrounds and perspectives.
I like that.
They've lived in multiple worlds, so they understand the importance of finding common ground.
Right.
And building empathy.
It makes you wonder what specific qualities they cultivate from those experiences that equip them to be those bridge builders.
One thing that comes up repeatedly is their resilience.
Okay.
They've faced incredible challenges, but they haven't given up hope.
Yeah.
They haven't allowed themselves to become cynical or disillusioned.
Right.
And that kind of strength, that ability to persevere in the face of adversity, it's something that can inspire everyone, not just other immigrants.
It's like they're saying, look, we've been through some tough times, but we made it. And if we can do it, so can you.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual resilience either.
What else?
It's about collective action. Many immigrants come from cultures where community is paramount.
Okay.
Where people rely on each other for support.
Yeah.
They bring that spirit of collaboration with them, a willingness to work together to solve problems.
So it's not just about me, it's about we.
Precisely. And that's a powerful antidote to the individualism that can sometimes pervade American society. Immigrants remind us that we're all in this together, that we need to look out for each other.
That sense of community, that shared responsibility, it seems especially important when you consider the challenges facing the U.S. today.
You know, one source even suggests that immigrants are, in some ways, more American than those of us born here.
That's a bold statement. What do they mean by that?
They're referring to the fact that immigrants often come to the U.S. with this deep appreciation for the ideals that this country represents.
Sure.
Freedom, opportunity, democracy. They've seen what it's like to live without those things, so they value them even more.
So it's not just about being physically present in America.
Right.
It's about embracing the values that underpin this nation.
Exactly. And because they've had to fight for those values,
Yeah.
they're often more willing to defend them, to stand up for what they believe in.
It's like they're saying, these freedoms are precious, and we're not going to let anyone take them away from us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of passion, that commitment to American ideals can be incredibly contagious.
Yeah.
It can re-energize the entire nation, remind us of what we're fighting for.
It sounds like we have a lot to learn from the immigrant experience.
I think so.
But for someone who hasn't had that experience, what's the best way to tap into this perspective, to gain those insights?
I think the most important thing is to approach it with humility, with a willingness to listen and learn. Don't assume you already know what it's like to be an immigrant.
So put aside any preconceived notions and be open to new perspectives.
Exactly. Read stories written by immigrants, listen to their podcasts. Attend events in your community where immigrants are sharing their experiences.
Right.
Even something as simple as reading books or watching films created by immigrants can really broaden your understanding.
It's about bridging that gap between us and them, recognizing that we're all part of the same human family.
Absolutely. And when we start to see each other as individuals rather than just stereotypes, that's when real change can happen.
So it's not just about these abstract concepts like diversity or inclusion.
Right.
It's about making real connections with people from different backgrounds,
Yeah.
hearing their stories and allowing those stories to change us.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by recognizing and celebrating the contributions that immigrants have made to American society. They've enriched our culture, our economy, our very sense of who we are as a nation.
I'm thinking about the countless examples of immigrants who've achieved incredible things in the U.S.
Yeah.
From entrepreneurs and scientists to artists and activists.
Exactly. They've founded companies. They've made groundbreaking discoveries.
Yeah.
They've created masterpieces of art and literature and fought tirelessly for social justice. Their stories are woven into the fabric of American history.
But their contributions go beyond these individual success stories, don't they?
Absolutely. Immigrants bring new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of doing things. They challenge us to think differently, to be more open-minded, to see the world from multiple angles.
So it's not just about what they do.
Yeah.
It's about how they make us think.
Exactly. They help us break out of our echo chambers, to question our assumptions, to expand our horizons. And that's something we desperately need in today's world.
It seems like there's a tendency to just focus on the challenges associated with immigration. The political debates, the economic concerns.
Right.
But this deep dive has really highlighted the incredible value that immigrants bring to this country.
Yeah, it's a perspective that's often overlooked, but it's essential to understanding the full richness and complexity of the American experience. And it's a perspective that we need to hear more of, not less.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember about the immigrant experience?
It's been fascinating uncovering all these different facets of the immigrant experience. It's so much more than just coming to a new country.
It really is. If I had to sum it up, I'd say the key takeaway is that the immigrant experience isn't a monolithic thing. It's like this tapestry woven from millions of individual stories, each one shaped by unique circumstances and challenges and triumphs.
Yeah.
So we can't make sweeping generalizations or assume we know the immigrant story because there isn't just one, right?
Exactly. And these stories are still being written every day,
Right.
adding to the richness and complexity of the American narrative.
It makes you realize how important it is to engage with these stories on an individual level. Move beyond the abstract and connect with that human element.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that shared humanity that binds us all together regardless of where we were born or how we got here. And understanding how those individual journeys, those personal narratives, contribute to that larger American story.
We've talked a lot about the value of the immigrant perspective, but for our listeners out there, what can they do to better understand and appreciate those experiences within their own communities? It can feel kind of overwhelming. To know where to start.
Sometimes the simplest actions are the most powerful. I'd say start by simply listening.
Okay.
Seek out opportunities to hear immigrant stories firsthand.
So instead of approaching it as like learning about immigrants,
Yeah.
it's more about connecting with individuals and their stories.
Exactly. There are so many ways to do that. Strike up a conversation with an immigrant neighbor,
Yeah.
attend cultural events or festivals,
Uh-huh.
volunteer at organizations that support newcomers.
Right.
Even something as simple as reading books or watching films created by immigrants can broaden your understanding.
It's about taking those small steps to break down the barriers that separate us, to move beyond stereotypes and just see each other as human beings.
Right. And remember, everyone has a story to tell.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey has been shaped by these unique experiences that have molded their worldview, their values, their aspirations.
Right.
And when we take the time to listen to those stories, we open ourselves up to a world of understanding and empathy.
And that understanding that empathy is the foundation for building a more inclusive and just society.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the immigrant perspective, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. What can you do, even in a small way, to help bridge the gap and create a more welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone?
What one action can you take today to make someone feel seen, heard, and valued? It doesn't have to be this grand gesture. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness and understanding can make the biggest difference.
Maybe it's offering a helping hand to a new family in your neighborhood, or speaking up against prejudice when you encounter it.
Yeah.
Or simply making an effort to learn more about the diverse cultures that enrich our communities.
Every action, no matter how small, ripples outward, creating a more positive and welcoming world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to continue exploring this fascinating world of the immigrant experience.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep building those bridges of understanding.
This is DigitView.